Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today, I had the pleasure to chat with Canadian rockabilly singer-songwriter, actor, voice teacher, and voiceover artist Tammy Darling. In this news episode, Tammy joins me for an in-depth discussion about her new CP, Electric Love, love for 50s, 60s music, performing a Josh Groban's course on the Stages tour at the Sony Centre, receiving honors in Bachelor of Music at Wilfrid University, admiration for Wanda Jackson, Brenda Lee, Connie Francis, her hope to revitalize retro sounds, and more. Now, with that being said, hope you enjoy our conversation with Tammy. Tammy, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I mean, it's great to chat with you, and we have a lot to talk about. But let's get this out of the way. You've got a new EP out, called Electric Love. Talk to me about that.
Sure. Electric Love is my debut EP. It has 7 tracks on it, which seems long for an EP, but it actually is only 20 minutes long. It combines many different iconic sounds from the 50s and 60s, rockabilly, rock and roll, swing, kind of soul doo-wop, and a little bit of pop. So it has a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. And if you were to choose your favorite songs off the EP, which one would it be?
That's hard. I really love Mr. Bartender because that was my debut single and I released that in 2020. It's just like a fun song about making cocktails, kind of hitting on the bartender while you're at it. And then I guess in the other songs that I wrote after that, Electric Love, like the title song, is probably my favorite just because it's really catchy. Yeah, and fun to sing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of great songs on that EP that I want to talk about as well. Let me pull it up here. I mean, you've got a lot of great songs on that EP.
Thanks.
There's the track list is Let's Go, Boogie into the Night, Pretty Little Dress, Electric Love, Hollywood Romance, Toxic Witch, and Mr. Bartender, which you talked about was your debut single. Um, was that sort of a surreal sort of moment for you where you said, man, I'm finally an artist, or I can call myself an artist now that I've released a debut single, but now that you have an EP, now you're more of an advanced level, I guess.
Yeah, writing Mr. Bartender at the beginning was very scary actually because before 2020 I was not a songwriter. I sang other people's songs. I sang covers, I was in musical theater. Um so I'd always wanted to write songs, but I just didn't know if I had the skills. Like I was worried about making bad songs, I guess. So yeah, I was a little scared to start writing, but I released a music video of I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas in 2019, and everyone should check it out. It's very quirky and cute. And after that, I just felt like I didn't want to continue recording other people's music, that the next step for me as an artist, as Miss Tammy Darling, was to write my own songs. And at the time, I guess I was coming up with songs to sing at an event coming up, covers. And I was trying to find like all of those songs everyone loves, and Shake, Rattle, and Roll came to mind. And that song, I was excited about singing at first. And then when I started to look at the lyrics, I was like, oh, these lyrics are a little problematic. Just like they're a little sexist in a way. So I didn't really feel comfortable singing the song anymore. And I tried to like think of ways I could change the lyrics to make it suitable, but it just like was not working. So instead of singing Shake, Rattle, and Roll, which is like shaking, I decided to write my own song about shaking, and it's about shaking cocktails. So yeah, I wrote that song. It was scary. I sent it to like my best friend, and like one of my collaborators, the pianist, and they said it was great. And so I was like, oh, then maybe this is the song. Maybe my first song I ever wrote, maybe I just have to record it and make a music video. So the music video is on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out. And so I guess the scariest part was just sending it to them at first. And once I had their approval, who are like really great musicians, then I knew I was on the right track. And yeah, making that music video and like releasing it and everything, like appearing on all the music streaming platforms on that day was, yeah, a little surreal.
Absolutely. And you kind of remind me of Marilyn Monroe a little bit. Um
The hair.
yeah, I mean you definitely have the sound of a, I guess, vintage um I guess the 50s, 60s retro kind of sound to your music, but also the look to you is also that 50s and 60s taste as well. Um, and so I want to talk about the lyrics in your song Boogie into the Night. Yeah, the lyrics come on, let's twist and shout, don't stop now, time to go all out, jive and boogie into the night, won't stop dancing, let's bring it on home now, twist and shout, don't stop now, time to go all out, and it repeats again. Um, was that just sort of the premise behind Boogie into the Night, where we're just trying to have fun and create a song for people just to really go all out and enjoy themselves?
Yeah, I wanted to write one of those like classic songs about dancing, like Twist and Shout, that sort of thing. So I just, yeah, Boogie into the Night came to mind. And yeah, it's just about like getting on that dance floor and like letting loose and having fun and dancing all night long.
Absolutely. And I mean there's a lot of strong lyrics in a lot of the songs that you've released on this EP. Electric Love, I guess, is the standout because it is the title track of the EP. Why did you call it Electric Love?
I called it Electric Love because um, of that feeling when you meet somebody and there's like that instant crazy connection with them, and how it maybe feels like electricity like running through your body, like they just make you feel like all like fuzzy inside, I guess. So yeah, electricity was just like the best way for me to describe that feeling.
For sure. And I want to read something about to for the listeners to really get a better understanding of who you are as an artist. It says Miss Tammy Darling brings audiences the charm of the mid-century vintage-inspired music and style, with a love for old Hollywood glamour and a fascination with the past. Her music is heavily influenced by the sounds of the 50s and 60s. She keeps this era alive by incorporating elements of blues, pop, swing, rockabilly, and old school rock and roll. I mean, we don't ever see often people like you and hear music that you release anymore, I guess, in a way, because there's a lot of people who can do like covers of Frank Sinatra songs. There's a lot of people who can do a lot of covers of Nat King Cole songs, but there isn't anyone that's, I guess, like purely dedicated to releasing old throwback songs that people haven't heard in a while.
There are those people, but it's a very small music scene. It's very niche, obviously. But yeah, Toronto has its own vintage music scene. I guess I'm different because I kind of take from all of the genres. But there are definitely bands like the Dreamboats. They do retro rock and roll. The Shook Boys. They do rockabilly. There's yeah many different bands, but yeah, it's a small scene, so you don't really notice we're there.
Absolutely. And you, I guess, doing some research about you, um, you went to Wilfrid University, and you had honors in Bachelor of Music in 2009. Tell me about the experience at Wilfrid. Was that sort of the, I guess, the validation for your career as a music artist?
You know what? I when I was younger, I never really sang much pop. I was mainly a musical theater and classical singer. And at that time, when I went to school, you couldn't go to musical theater school and get a degree. You could only get a diploma. So I decided to go to Laurier so that I could get the degree and then had more options afterwards. But yeah, so I studied classical music. And then while I was at Laurier, still kind of sang musical theater on the side. And then it wasn't really until I moved to Toronto and was introduced to this like vintage community that's in Toronto that I realized that people were making this music and singing these old classic songs and dressing the part. And so that's when I sort of decided that that's what I wanted to do with my music. It was a
For
very
sure,
long legal journey to get there.
for sure, for sure. And you've done a lot in your career already. Um, but the thing that kind of confuses me, and I was wanting to know this because I had this other musical artist and we talked about identity because that's important as well for an artist. And we I found interesting about him that he changed his name from I think it was Stephen Michaels Kabakis, and then he just went with Steve Michaels. And I asked him, was that sort of the reinvention part of just wanting to change your name, or was it for the sake of just changing your name? Um, and I found that interesting because your name, I guess your stage name is Tammy Darling, but your
Mhm.
real name is Tammy Wetham.
Yes.
Was Talk to me about that because I want to get a better understanding of what that situation is.
Yeah. So before I started really singing 1950s and 1960s songs and writing in that style, I created a pinup persona called Miss Tammy Darling, because I was going to enter a pinup pageant, and so you have a name, and so it's a name that like I don't know, kind of characterizes who you are just within one name. So my real name is Tammy, so that fits, and it sounds like a name from the 1950s, 1960s. So that was perfect. And then Darling, just because like I'm kind of sweet, I guess, like my persona on stage is very, very sweet. Um, so that's where that name kind of started. And then once I had created Miss Tammy Darling, I just kept that name for the music. And then having that distinguishing names like Tammy Wedham and Miss Tammy Darling. Miss Tammy Darling specifically does 1950s, 1960s. She dresses in this style. And then when I'm Tammy Wedham, I'm not necessarily dressed like this, and I'm usually singing various other genres. So that's kind of why I have the two different names.
Absolutely. And you have a lot of experiences which we talked about earlier in the interview. And you've had a lot of training programs experiences as well. You did NYU's Steinhardt Summer Study Musical Theater 2009. You've directed children's musical theater programs, presenting performance and audition master classes. What I didn't know about you was what I found fascinating was not only about your music and your style, but you also were able to be on Josh Groban's Stages tour, I guess. So how was that experience? Because Josh Groban is one of my favorite artists.
It was very cool. So there's a musical director in Toronto who needed to pull together a choir to sing with him. So I guess every city he has a different kind of group of singers that come in. I think we had two rehearsals. I'm trying to remember like how many songs. It was probably just like three songs. But yeah, I mean, he came into our dressing room and like said hello to us, but I didn't really get to like talk to him, one on one or anything like that. It was kind of like we took a picture with him and then he had to leave to go do his thing. But yeah, that was definitely a very cool moment, a highlight of my career for sure.
Yeah, and I mean that definitely has to be a highlight in your life. But um, what was it about that experience that sort of catapulted your whole career, I guess now as a whole, in music?
Um, that performance, because it was actually he was singing his musical theater stuff. So it was kind of that other side of me, Tammy Wedham, who sings musical theater. Um, it definitely opened doors like to make new connections with different singers and even to work with that musical director who I had worked with in the past, but to work with again on like a bigger project. For sure that impacted the projects that were to come after that.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the music nowadays is not really, I guess, portrayed to 50s and 60s anymore. And you did say that, with the love of Hollywood and a fascination with the past, my original music is influenced by the iconic sounds of the 1950s and 60s, and I hope to revitalize these retro sounds, keeping them alive for future generations to enjoy. What is it about the 50s and 60s music that makes you so drawn to it?
Um, I guess the catchy tunes mainly. The instrumentation, like there's a lot of saxophone in that music, which I find is really fun. But sometimes it's just the silly stories that go along in the songs. Like, and I think actually that's like the bridge between musical theater and pop is that kind of style, the 1950s and 1960s style, because they're very like they're kind of telling a story all the way through the song. Or just like the silly lyrics, like I just sang this song recently, but like yakety yak, about like telling the children to like, obey their parents, take out the trash and clean their rooms, and that they shouldn't talk back. So I just think it's like catchy and fun, kind of quirky at times. So that's kind of why I'm drawn to it.
Absolutely. And you also did say, I enjoy writing tunes that appeal to a multi-generational audience and encourage listeners to take a step back in time. Occasionally, mid-century music presents outdated values, and sticking to the contemporary vintage community's mantra, vintage style, not vintage values. I infuse these old styles with modern values in a fresh female perspective, which I guess you touched on earlier, but then I want to get your sense on what you said here in this quote about the community's mantra of vintage style, not vintage values, but you're also infusing those old styles with modern values and a fresh female perspective. Do you feel that's still relevant with what you're doing now?
I think so. So, yeah, I talked about Shake, Rattle, and Roll and how that kind of influenced Mr. Bartender. But yeah, like a lot of songs were just kind of maybe sexist or talked about girls who were 16 or talked about I don't know, women's roles and all that kind of stuff. And so my songs are not talking about those things. And like my song Pretty Little Dress, actually, that's probably the most feminist song on my album, and that's like where that stance kind of comes from. And that is that sometimes you want to put on a nice outfit, and that doesn't give anybody permission to like catcall you or comment on your appearance. So that song is for all of the ladies out there that have experienced that kind of attention that, we don't really love that.
And do you feel that's changing now?
Maybe slowly. Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously got to be challenges within to break into the music industry, because I was talking to a lot of female musical artists and understanding what their perspective is on the music industry and what their whole view on it is. And I've gotten some really, I guess, how do I say it? It's a really deep, well thought out answers and gives you a little more clarity on what it is now these days. But for you, also being a female in the music industry, how much is it for you to keep yourself grounded, but also empowered to break into the industry without feeling like there are barriers?
Um, yeah, releasing that song, Pretty Little Dress, that was scary for me, I guess, because I didn't know how people were going to take that song. I was worried that all the men that were listening were gonna like roll their eyes at it. But when someone was telling me their favorite songs, they actually a man told me that was one of his favorite songs, and I was like, oh my gosh, really? And he said, yeah, it's so empowering. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was going for. So, and also actually another review of the EP said that song could be a feminist anthem for the 2020s, which was pretty cool to hear. So yeah, I'm there's definitely challenges as a female and speaking your mind through your music, that when you're talking about things like that yeah, you're a little scared that maybe people are not going to accept the lyrics or accept the content like you hope they will.
Yeah, and you have kids of your own, right?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I really find it fascinating to really understand the whole concept behind your music and the whole concept about your career wise. But now that, like, I guess that now that you're older now, and you kind of look back on that younger, I guess, Tammy, what would you tell that younger self?
Um, Probably that she didn't need to go to school for classical music. Because I'm not really doing that now, though that for sure shaped who I am and the music, like my understanding of music and how I write music. Um, what would I tell younger Tammy? I guess just to keep at it, and that the time spent, building the foundation of the career will pay off eventually.
Absolutely. And do you feel like it's already paying off so far in your career?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like um, as a newer songwriter, I received three different grants from three different granting bodies, and so that was like a nice feeling when I received those emails to be like, oh, people believe in me. People like what I'm doing. They want to support me, and so it gave me just that reassurance that I wasn't just like a novice, I guess. Like they're not just going to give any money to anybody. So yeah, that was a really nice surprise.
So it really does seem that you've been reassured now and validated about your career, and now that you have a better understanding of everything, and that you've gotten older and to really learn from different parts of the industry and different people in the industry. Who are some of those musical, I guess, idols that you've looked up to?
Um, is this like people who are still alive that I'm like in my
Oh,
circle?
well, I don't think it has to be anyone alive. It can be anybody in general.
Yeah, because I want to say all the female artists from the 1950s and 1960s. So like in my shows, those are the covers that I do. I do a lot of Wanda Jackson, Brenda Lee, Petula Clark, Leslie Gore, Connie Francis. Um, so they definitely influence, and I think that's why I have some rockabilly. That's like the Wanda Jackson and Brenda Lee influence. And then I have those like there's two songs on my album that are more influenced by like girl groups from the 1960s, like the Shirelles, the Crystals, the Ronettes. Um, and then Hollywood Romance, my ballad, is probably influenced by like people like Connie Francis and Leslie Gore for sure.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to some of the other songs on this EP that you've released. Hollywood Romance. I think that one really screams what you're about, I guess, in a sense, because it is about the 50s and 60s, and Hollywood Romance just fits the bill of your musical style. Tell me about the creation of that song.
Um, yeah, so I am a romantic, I guess. And so I had always hoped that I was going to meet the man of my dreams in sort of one of those meet cutes that you see in a romantic comedy or those classic Hollywood films. Though that's not the way that the world works now. You have to meet people on apps most of the time, which I ended up doing and it was great. But there was just that part of me that was like resistant to that because I just wanted to have that cute little story. So that song is definitely influenced by all of those iconic films, bumping into somebody on the sidewalk and dropping things and them helping you, or like she loves me, or you've got mail sort of kind of story where you're sending love letters and you don't realize who the person is, that you maybe already know them. So yeah, I just had always hoped that that was going to be me in one of those kind of stories.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of songs on this, and I've already listed the song names. If you haven't heard the EP, you can go stream it to all music platforms. And I guess while we're still talking here, I do have a game that I would love to play with you here. Um, and this is not like any ordinary game. This is a game called How Deep Will You Go? And it's basically a conversation to, I guess, break the surface level based questions and really understand someone on a personal level, more so than just the surface level based. Um, so we're gonna start with icebreakers. And so I'm gonna read you a question, and I want you to answer it to the best of your ability. Um, so here it is. What is your favorite compliment someone has given you?
I guess actually recently, because I just did my EP release, someone that I've known for years said that they didn't know that I could get better. So like 10 years ago when we worked together, we were doing our thing. And then, that since those 10 years that I've improved and grown and that I'm super confident on stage. And so, yeah, it's just nice to know that as an artist, I'm still improving.
Absolutely. And I think for me, the favorite compliment that someone has given me is, I guess for this podcast wise, I will share one of the compliments that I received. I think someone told me that they admired the way that I sort of changed the whole, I guess, interview style of talking to somebody on a more personal level, but more at a more relaxed level instead of, like the media based interview types where they just ask you and they kind of interfere with your answer, and then they kind of cut you off at a very dramatic end. I mean, you don't get to finish what you were thinking about and what you want to express to people. So I feel that was probably one of my favorite compliments that I've received. So with that being said, we're going to go on to level two here, and level two are confessions. So here's the question. What do you think your past self would think of you now?
My past self. Uh, I think my past self would be happy with the woman I've become. Um, that they'd be like, yeah, girl, go get it. I don't know. They'd be, I think, proud of like what I've accomplished.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, it's that I think I've learned to surround myself with people, I guess from middle school to high school and then to college. I think I've been able to really surround myself with people who understand me and people who really see the potential that I have rather than having the, I guess, the nerve of a young person going in and not knowing anything and not knowing what to expect of different things in life, whatever. I think that sort of like opened my eyes at different points in time in my life. I think that's probably what that answer would be for me. Um, and so the last question is just getting deep. And this is level three. So the final level, and here's the question. Do you feel lost in life? But like it doesn't have to be currently, but do you feel lost? Did you feel lost at any point in your life? And what was that moment?
Hmm. I've definitely felt lost at times, whether that's um not knowing whether I'm going to find the man of my dreams, someone in their 30s who hasn't kind of settled down. Now I'm with somebody, and so like that, I'm not lost in that anymore. Um, and career-wise, for sure, felt lost when you don't book something or when something doesn't work out for you, like for example, writing grants. I had to apply to Ontario Arts Council 3 times before I received a grant for the EP. So I definitely felt lost after receiving that second uh, decline. Uh, I'm sure there's many other times where I've felt lost, but those are the things that come to mind right now.
Certainly, and with the time remaining that we have left here, I want to ask you this final question, and this question has challenged every single person that's come on this podcast. And so I'm going to pose it to you now. If you were to play a song with anybody who's already in heaven, who would it be, and what song would you play?
I would sing Can't Help Falling in Love with Elvis, probably, because that's my favorite song.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got two Elvis posters behind me, and they're from the Elvis film, that Austin Butler was in, and what a great job he's done in that film. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a really good film to really understand, even if you're not an Elvis fan to begin with. I guess Elvis film really is a great way to introduce yourself to Elvis Presley's music and his career, and it tells the whole thing from beginning to end. It's not like here's a middle part of his life and that's what his movie is about. No, I think it's more so about the entirety of his life. It poses from start to end, and the struggles that he's been through. But well, I mean, it's the end of our time together. But thank you so much for chatting with me. I had such a blast to be able to pick your brain about your music and also really get to know you on a better level, and understand your music as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. That was great.
Well, to the listeners who made it this far into the episode, thanks so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Canadian rockabilly singer, songwriter, actor, voice teacher, and voiceover artist Tammy Darling. If you want to connect with Tammy, you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and on YouTube. For more information about her music, visit her website, MissTammyDarling.com. You can help support my show. Please feel free to share with family, friends on social media. You can find me on all podcast streaming platforms. I've been your host, Jigme Kelsang. Thanks for tuning into the show.